morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, March 31st, 2016. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5. Back on schedule, back with Steve Wiltfong. Back on schedule, back with Steve Wiltfong, Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports. How are you, Steve?
Good morning, Daniel. Raining here in Indianapolis. Sending it your way if it's not already there. Well, we had some storms yesterday. But I'm sitting out in front of the LA Fitness, ready to get a workout in, but excited to talk Buckeyes recruiting and football first.
I'm glad you could pay the bills first, and it is raining like an SOB here, so Gem City weather continues. Down the road in Columbus, though, one of your state residents, Steve, is an Indiana native, who you have been talking up, I really feel like, for several years, has made quite an impression with the Buckeyes. Austin Mack, the early arrival freshman, we are hearing many, many, many good things about, and even Urban Meyer has talked him up in public. Obviously, this is not surprising to yourself, Steve.
It's not, but mainly because Ohio State, wouldn't let it be a surprise. When you talk to them through the recruiting process, and obviously they're not allowed to comment publicly on kids till they sign in February, but leading up to Austin Mack's verbal, when you talk to people inside the Woody, they had him as one of the elite receivers in the country, one of the top guys. Had him higher than guys like Nate Craig, and this was back when, Nate Craig was billed as the guy by, people in my industry. You had Ohio State talking about Austin Mack being one of the top one or two receivers in the country. He finished number 4 in the 24/7 Sports rankings, but he started in the teens and worked his way all the way up to 4. But Ohio State knew what they were getting the whole time. He was a priority for them since the summer before his junior year. And it just shows you how good they are at evaluating. So when you see a guy like Austin Mack, who's having such a great camp, obviously hasn't done anything on Saturdays yet, but it's looking real promising. Then you think back to the signing day press conference, and you're like, well, who else did Urban Meyer give great praise to? And then when you hear what he said about Dwayne Haskins, you're like, well, hell, they already hit on Austin Mack, or it looks like they hit on Austin Mack with everything they said about what he was going to be. It makes me real excited to see what Dwayne Haskins is going to do. Now, I've always said Dwayne's one of the most natural, or is the most natural thrower of the football in this class, and one of the top quarterbacks in the class. That's documented in writing, but you almost still don't know what that means to get compliments like that from a coach like Urban Meyer. And you see Austin Mack producing now. It's going to be real interesting when Dwayne gets in there and watching him develop. And I'm starting to pay more attention to stuff like that when you hear it behind the scenes from coaches that have a high hit mark.
Agreed completely. And Meyer has even been quoted recently as saying potential. If you've been at Ohio State for 3 or 4 months and they're still using the word potential, it means not good enough. So the fact that you're hearing the plaudits on Mack is excellent. I think one of the reasons he's done so well that we didn't discuss is almost one of the same reasons I thought Ezekiel Elliott did so well early on. Is they are thick, strong dudes, man. Austin Mack is built almost like a running back. I'm sorry?
And they love working. Mack is built like a running back from the bottom, from the lower half. I mean, you look at his legs, and he kind of reminds. He's got a big bottom frame. It kind of reminded me of Golden Tate. Golden Tate was kind of thin up top, and Austin's not thin up top. But when you looked at those legs, it was like, damn, that cat's very, very strong and powerful. And Austin can run. He ran that 4.4 at Ohio State's camp prior to his junior year, and Urban Meyer started personally recruiting him after that, and ran into Austin Mack's receivers coach at a Chicago showcase I was at over the weekend, where Antoine Simmons was named my overall top performer, the Buckeyes linebacker commit, and Austin Mack's receivers coach. He just kind of said casually, Austin's going to start. Obviously, he's partial to Austin, but sounds like all the buzz around Austin Mack right now, and you started with it on the show, is 2 thumbs up.
No doubt, which is really good news because they need help at receiver, that's for sure. Speaking of receiver and help, that could be on the way at some point. Maybe the name we've heard the most over the past 2 weeks, Tyjon Lindsey, wide receiver, scat back, slot guy out of California. We've had some intel on the site from our people that things are looking good. His recent visit was strong. Have you heard the same?
Well, he's the touchdown maker. He's a threat to score every time he touches it. I thought he's been the best slot receiver in the country the last 2 years. So that's what I think of him. Alex Gleitman had a great recap with him on Bucknuts where Tyjon gave a lot of glowing quotes. So the only thing I can add is that I asked some people that I know close to the program what they thought, and they just could confirm basically what Alex and Bill have been writing and saying. It went very well, not well, but very well. Tyjon's expected to take his time. He's going to release a top 10. To me, the top two's been obvious for a while, USC and Ohio State. So the others are just, hoping to get on the list and take their swing. Notre Dame probably running a distant third as a school that's also given him some intrigue. But Ohio State's sitting in a very, very good spot for touchdown maker. The best slot receiver in the country, a guy that would be tough to keep off the field as a true freshman, Tyjon Lindsey.
Obviously, a little concerned with the fact that he's a California kid and USC is the other squad, but I got a good vibe on this one.
No one's going to recruit him better than Ohio State. No one's going to recruit him better than Zach Smith. So for when you have that going for you, Zach Smith, Urban Meyer, those guys are going to be very involved in recruiting Tyjon, and not to say that USC won't do a good job with T. Martin leading the way, who was the 24/7 Sports Recruiter of the Year. Zach Smith's just a great recruiter, and then you get the head coach support on down to the off-field staff. The communication is going to be regular. You just point to Benjamin Victor, and you look at all the schools that he could have went to that were within driving distance of him. But Zach Smith's just daily effort, along with the rest of the staff. Benjamin Victor couldn't say no to Ohio State. I could definitely see that happening with Tyjon here as well, especially with some of the guys Ohio State's already got committed. Tyjon's connecting with those guys as well, led by Haskell Garrett, of course.
I also hope, and I say this, I was saying this on every BM5 going forward, I've said it for a year, these guys all have ESPN, and when the draft comes on this year, it is going to be one big Ohio State commercial. And it's going to be very hard for guys like Tyjon Lindsey, who view themselves as 3-year lottery pick type players, to resist what's becoming an NFL factory. If anyone's read any of the news last week, you've had teams, the Cowboys were here, the Texans were here, so entire staffs are coming to work out the Buckeyes because it's worth their while. So that's what every one of the kids who comes to Ohio State thinks they're a 3-year player unless you're a punter.
What round's Jalen Smith going? What round's Jalen Marshall going?
Jalen Marshall. Wow, Jalen Smith and Jalen Marshall are two very interesting.
I meant to say Jalen Marshall.
Yeah, but they're both interesting if you look at it.
Right.
I think Jalen Smith was a guy who probably would have been a top 3 pick.
Sure.
I think he probably would have been a San Diego Charger had he not hurt his knee, but now.
Same high school as Austin Mack.
Yeah, studs. I mean, but Jalen Smith, there were some people saying he was the best player in the draft before he got hurt. Jalen Marshall, I'm thinking 5th round, maybe a little bit hopeful there.
The reason why, I just remember, and we get them wrong. We definitely get them wrong at 24/7 Sports, and our peers get them wrong, but I'll still never forget the outrage when Jalen Marshall was kind of lowered into the 3rd round. Like I think we had him ranked around a 3rd round grade coming out of high school, and this was when we were new to Bucknuts. 24/7 Sports was new, so we didn't have as much clout with your great readers at the time, but I'll just never forget the absolute outrage of Jalen Marshall's ranking, and it sounds like we may have had that one right.
But Jalen was a Ohio living legend at Middletown. Yeah, his college career probably didn't go according to plan as much as we all thought, but
he's going to play on Sunday for a long time, so that's the plan. Win his plan, won a national title. I thought it went as planned.
I mean, when his plan as a team, and he's going to hit his ultimate goal. I think coming in, people saw him closer to the way we talk about Tyjon Lindsey now almost than we.
All right.
than we got. But we'll see. I mean, it's like I said, the NFL draft is going to be an absolute extravaganza of Buckeyes. It's going to be
no question.
The best PR you can get. Speaking of PR, the top 24/7 for 2018 will be released later today. The Buckeyes have obviously owned in on several subjects or prospects, one of whom, Springfield native Leonard Taylor. Looks like he's probably going to end up being the highest-rated defensive tackle in Ohio, obviously. But he's also part of what it looks like also is going to be a classic's maybe not the right word, Michigan-Ohio State battle. The last time Ohio State really got into a battle for someone at Springfield High, they lost. It was Trey DePriest, who went to Alabama. New regime at Springfield High, former Trotwood coach Maurice Douglas, now there. For those who remember Maurice Douglas, he was once a safety for the Chicago Bears. What's the latest on Leonard Taylor? He's apparently headed out of town this weekend.
Well, less and less Michigan and Ohio State recruiting battles these days just because they're both recruiting nationally under the new staffs, and they're recruiting different guys nationally. So less recruiting battles between the two, and then Michigan State's kind of reaped the benefits of those two going far away from home, and Michigan State did the best in the Midwest last year. But Leonard Taylor, he's an upside guy. Played tight end early in his career. The whole thing's early in his career, but at the beginning of his career, and kind of grew into a defensive lineman this past year, and just has a ton of size, athleticism, and upside. So that's why he's become a coveted prospect. I know the guys at Wolverine 247, Steve Lorenz, really like where Michigan stands with them. Ohio State, he's been there a couple times, so no question he likes the Buckeyes too. My crystal ball's on Ohio State, but I wouldn't say that I'm super confident in that one. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, one of the few perhaps recruiting battles for Ohio State and Michigan in that 2018 class, just because there's a lot of good players to go around, and they're just kind of going after different guys. Ohio State's a more household name. But Ohio State, you look at Ohio State's 17 class, they're just on another level than everybody right now. And then you look at the targets on the board, and you just think, the class they can sign, hell, if it stays together and holds together, it's going to be a very special class. Ohio State's number one in the 24/7 sports rankings right now. I just don't see them relinquishing that.
If there's ever been a good place to finish a radio show, that was it. We will leave you with that nugget of love there from Steve Wiltfong. Happy to have you back, Steve. Have a great one, Bucknutters.
Happy to have you back, Dan. Good. Hope you had a great vacation. Appreciate everybody. Talk to you next week.